Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba. Bhajans are meant to drop you into yourself. There's an old saying that says if you want to get God to laugh, tell him your plans. Post-traumatic stress comes from usually one of three things if you're a combat veteran. And he said, she's gone. This is 50 years after the Vietnam War. I said, who's gone? He said, that girl appeared in my dream every night.
Whoa.
For 50 years. And after the first Kriya, she disappeared. Now that
is a horror.
Transformational healing. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. So when I was on a plane flight, we're getting ready to land, the plane went upside down. So people that were in their seatbelts find themselves hanging in the seatbelts. People that weren't in their seatbelts went flying. Luggage went flying. Plane is shaking. It felt like we were going to crash. And I closed my eyes and I said, Jai Gurudev. And Gurudev's face appeared. He said, not tonight. Then I realized that Gurudev was more than his physical body.
You have learned from both Maharshi Mahesh Yogi and Shri Ravi Shankar. How would you compare between them?
You know, they're both from the same tradition, Shankaracharya tradition, but they manifested it in a different way. You know, I was astonished. I was teaching at Wharton, and the person next to me was a very famous guy named Bill George, who was the founder of a multi-billion-dollar company called Medtronics. And even I was surprised when he said he attributed 90% of the success of his company to his daily practice of meditation. So it's huge. A lot of talents come out when you meditate. But you have to use them. You have to act, you know? Otherwise you become a spiritual couch potato. And you just sit there and think, oh, I'm in bliss, I'm this, I'm that.
We have covered several topics in this podcast. I hope you enjoy the episode till the end. And make sure to subscribe to the channel so we can keep bringing such amazing episodes to you and that you don't miss out. Cheers.
John's music at the end. 13 minutes of pure joy.
Om Gananaham Tva Ganapatigam Havamahe Kavim Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jayeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspat Ana Srinvanu Tabisi Saranam Shri Mahaganapataye Namaha. Get all the obstacles out of the way.
Amazing. Everybody, welcome to another episode of Rocklaz. This is your host Tanmay Shah. And today we are joined with John Osborne, who is a senior Art of Living faculty, and he's been teaching meditation and wellness for over 40 years. But what you don't know is he's been in senior management positions in private investment banks. He has run his own venture capital fund for about 15 years. He's been a business consultant to American Express, Wells Fargo, Ford Motors, and many renowned companies. He's been a speaker at Harvard, Wharton, Yale, UCLA, Google, Microsoft, World Bank, and even the US Congress. He has, as I mentioned, he has been a senior faculty in Art of Living, taught meditation for over 40 years. He developed and taught Project Welcome Home Troops, which is to bring relief to the army veterans from the traumatic stress and moral injuries and combat-related traumas. He is loved by everybody for his teachings as well as the music and satsangs. Fun fact, he has also studied at Gurukul. So we'll know more about it as we speak here. So how are you doing today?
Very happy to be here, thank you. You did your homework, I see.
Yes. So, as everybody loves your music, and we'll also hear a sound bite of it at the beginning, you might have heard. Music and spirituality. What are your thoughts on music and spirituality?
They both come from the heart. And music can drop you into that place in the heart where you feel connected to yourself on a deep level and connected with everyone around you, which is why we love to sing in a group. Takes you out of your head, brings you into your heart, and brings up a lot of joy from inside.
How did you pick up music?
I was doing Seva. I was working as a volunteer in a camp for kids with muscular dystrophy in the Adirondack Mountains of northern New York. And someone else had a guitar, and they started to teach me as a teenager, and that was the beginning.
So what seva were you doing?
I don't know if you know about muscular dystrophy, but kids usually arrive at that camp in a wheelchair. And they've lost a lot of the normal functioning of their bodies and nervous systems. So one volunteer counselor per one camper takes them through the session. So the camper's on the lower bunk, you're on the upper bunk, you wake them up in the morning, you help them go to the bathroom. They're pretty not mobile. You help them wash up, you help them eat, you take them through the activities in the day, put them to bed at night. And I volunteered doing that for part of a summer.
And how did you discover spirituality?
I think that we're all innately spiritual. And when I was a little boy, I grew up in the country in northern New York State. And it was a safer time where you could parents would let their kids just wander. And I lived near woods and fields, and I just often had the desire to go be by myself. And sometimes when I was riding my bike, this feeling would come up in me where I would disappear. And I'd just be one with the trees and the fields and everything. And this incredible joy just welled up from within me. And I felt so free. And I never experienced that again until my first Sudarshan Kriya. Even though I've been meditating for 10 or 15 years before I learned Sudarshan Kriya, that welling up of joy from deep inside was an experience that I had, starting at like age 4 or 5, something like that.
So you have always been a seeker.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
1975, your bio mentions that you started teaching.
Started teaching meditation in 1975, learned to meditate in 1971.
71.
I was teaching something called Outward Bound, which is a program that takes kids into the wilderness, teaches them about themselves, teaches them survival skills. And one of the teachers with me, I was teaching kids from the inner city, never got mad, never lost energy, never lost their sense of humor, put more into the program, took more out of the program, was very fulfilled. And it being the end of the 60s, I'm like, what kind of drug are you taking? And he said, no, it's this thing I do twice a day, 20 minutes. So he was already a meditator. And I said, that sounds really strange. If for some people meditation sounds a little eyebrow raising now, back then you can imagine, it was like you were from outer space if you were a meditator. And I said, that sounds really strange, but he was a good friend, and he put his arm on my shoulder and he said, I know it sounds strange, but for my sake, check it out. And so 3 or 4 months later, when I was in college, a meditation teacher appeared and I learned, and that was the beginning.
And how did you join Art of Living?
I was very involved in the TM program. And
TM as in
Transcendental Meditation. I taught Transcendental Meditation for a long time, from 1975 to 1988. In 1988, I moved to Santa Barbara. Was at a dinner party with meditating friends, and there was a Indian Jyotishi, a pundit there, from Karnataka, palm leaf reader, who needed a place to stay. I had just rented this wonderful little cottage right on the Pacific Ocean. Like, you go to sleep and you'd hear the waves crashing. It was that close to the ocean. And I thought it would be good to welcome a guest. I just moved in about a week before. And I knew enough about Indians to know that I could just roll a mat out on the floor and he'd be perfectly happy. And so not only did he come to my house, but he turned my house into his business, enterprising Tamil businessman, Jyotishi. So people were coming in all day long to have readings done. And one day he said, a boyhood friend of mine has come to speak at the university from Bangalore. Will you take me to see him? And so I drove him over to, as it turns out, Jeff Houck's house. It's now a close friend of mine. We both have been teaching for a long time. I walked in the bedroom and there was, as he was called then, Pandit Ravi Shankar.
So what was the first experience of meeting Shri Ravi Shankar, as he called?
It was a variety of experiences. The first was a kind of astonishment. And the second was, I know this person. Like, the person was very familiar to me. And the third was, like, my whole life fell out from under me, like all my plans. I knew at that moment that my life had changed completely in that one moment. And so I started to laugh. It's like, there's an old saying that says, if you want to get God to laugh, tell him your plans. And so I had this whole career and everything, and I was living, I had a job, I was living on the ocean, I had a nice life. But I saw right in that moment that it was all going to change.
Mm. And how did it change?
Well, Gurudev, of course, was the only person teaching the Kriya in those days. There wasn't even an art of living yet. And most people have learned, if they've learned in person, they've learned a 30-minute Kriya in India as well as the West. My Kriya was 2.5 hours. And so it was pretty extreme. There were people yelling and screaming and running around the room and speaking in foreign languages that they didn't know. It was very intense. But my attention went in the opposite direction. It went inward and deeper than I'd ever gone in meditation. And it was as if right at the center of that Kriya, a door opened. And when I walked through the door, it was that same experience that I had when I was 5 years old, of unboundedness and joy and bliss and connection to everything. And there were tears pouring down my face. I was so grateful because I thought I'd lost it forever. And I thought if I could help one other person to have this experience, my life would be completely worthwhile, completely fulfilled. So right after that, the next day I invited Gurudev over to do Guru Puja. There were no adoring crowds, as you can imagine. I think 2 people came with him. And he did Guru Puja. We had tea, and then we walked on the beach. And I said to him, "You seem very familiar to me. Have we been together before?" And he assured me that we had. And I said, "I don't know what you're going to do here, but it feels like huge, like Brahman, like you're not here for a small thing." And he said, "It'll all happen all by itself." And then I remembered a story from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I'm sure you also know, where Indra gets mad at a village and rains on the village. And Krishna takes pity, compassion on the village and puts a mountain up. And then the people put their sticks because they want to be part of it. I said, "I have my stick up for you." And we laughed. But right away after that, all I wanted to do was serve. So he had a course the next weekend in Los Angeles. I was sort of setting up the room with other people, not just me. But, in the whole Art of Living then, there might have been, I think I was the second or third course in the United States. It was maybe 30 or 40 people that had been taught, 50 people at the most. So very small. So I helped on that course in Los Angeles, and the week after that, he taught a course in San Francisco. I was there. I called friends from all over the country, told them, meditating friends, that they had to come. People flew in from all over the country, on my word. And then after that, I was on a 10-day course in silence in Canada. It was just a happening. When he said it all happened by itself, it was just like, oh, this is the next thing to do. This is the next thing to do. Like that.
Wow. In a satsang few days ago, Guruji asked you particularly, and many people in the audience who have been with him for over 30, 40 years, are you bored?
Never a moment bored. Never
are you bored of Guruji and Art of Living?
Never. Never. Because what happens after a while when your mind starts to slow down, there's just the moment that you're in, and then the next moment that you're in, and then the next moment that you're in. And you never know what that moment is going to be like. And after a while, you start getting guidance in every moment. Oh, it's time to call this person. Don't know why I'm calling them, but it's time to call this person. Or I have to remember to call this person and check in on the next course I'm in. So more and more, it's like you're kind of on automatic pilot. There's just the moment and what to do in the moment, and then the next moment, like that.
Boredom comes from repetition. And you have been doing these things again and again. So what do you find something new always in all these years and decades?
Every time I teach a course, there's always something new in the course. Either there's a refinement, or there's something I've heard from the first time, even though I played the video 100 times, or the audience is different. When you're teaching veterans who are very traumatized, it's a completely different experience. During COVID, I taught mostly frontline healthcare workers who also had post-traumatic stress online. So teaching these very traumatized people and you're on your computer, that's a challenge. And the people are always a challenge. Every course is different because of the consciousness in the room. So no, never bored.
Let's talk about trauma. You have helped the frontline workers and the war veterans who might have seen a lot of tragedy and moral injury and stress from the battlefield. Can you give us examples of how they come as and how do they go back as?
Post-traumatic stress, we can start there, comes from usually one of three things if you're a combat veteran. It's either something that you've lost, someone close to you, or even an injury that you have, something that you've seen that's too horrific that you can't get it out of your mind, or something that you've done that you can't get out of your mind. And so the trauma is so embedded, so intense, so overwhelming, that a big part of your awareness is stuck there. We talk about being in the present moment. They can't be in the present moment. Their awareness keeps going back and back and back to that time, trying to heal it. It's like a computer that's trying to reboot, that's somehow gotten off track. So a large part of their consciousness is stuck in that place, and a huge amount of pain, emotional pain, sometimes physical pain, but the pain is stuck in the body. So a lot of times they'll go to a counselor at the Veterans Authority and try to talk about it, but it doesn't get it out because it's so traumatizing and so threatening that they pushed it way down in the body. But when they're doing the Kriya, when they're doing the breath, not only does the stress start to leave, but they touch what if I was speaking to an Indian audience, we would call Shiva Tattva, that place that's innocent and unbounded at the center of everyone. And when they touch that, everything changes. Number one, they're brought into the present moment. And number two, their relation to that trauma changes. The incident, whatever caused it, still is there, but it's not so overwhelming anymore. It brings them way more into the present moment and helps them, join kind of a normal life again, be with their family, be able to take a job. It's huge. I did a study, actually I only taught the study, but a wonderful doctor named Emma Sapella did the study of vets at University of Wisconsin. And in a 7-day program, we discovered that the symptoms of PTS dropped about 40 to 50%. And interestingly enough, 6 months later, the symptoms were still lower. So something long-term happens to them when they practice the Kriya.
Wow.
Very fulfilling work. The most challenging teaching I've ever done, but the most fulfilling at the same time. Because these people aren't able to sleep at night. A lot of them are addicted to drugs and alcohol. They have nothing close to a normal life. I taught somebody that was on 20 medications a day for 40 years from the Vietnam War. He's completely off all his medications now, sleeping through the night without medicine. I mean, tell me something you'd rather do than be part of a program like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So wonderful to, even hear this. Somebody who's been suffering for such a long time can find his meaning in life and overcome his own battles through this amazing Sudarshan Kriya.
Yeah, and there's a new program that was started by Michael Fishman, another senior teacher in the Art of Living, called Art of Recovery. And my next assignment for them is to teach a recovery program for women who have been physically and sexually assaulted. And it works the same for anybody who's traumatized. But, you can imagine your approach to those women in teaching them would be different than your approach to teaching soldiers. So that's where the lack of boredom comes. Every course has its own challenges. The techniques are the same. Actually, the results are usually the same. But how to reach those people, how to gain their trust, how to make them feel comfortable, how to be able to take them to a place where they then want to learn the techniques and practice them on their own. That's always a challenge.
What is the most impactful? The technique, the knowledge, the satsang, the group, the music? What do you think has had the most impact
On me or on the art of living in general?
on the participants you have seen?
Actually, none of those. This is a loaded word in the West. It means different things to different people, but I would have to say it's the grace. Like, I'm very aware when I'm teaching that I'm not the one that's doing the transforming in the room. So one of the tricks of teaching is to set up the conditions for transformation to happen and then get out of the way.
Ah.
And then something bigger than you comes in and does all the heavy lifting. So eventually you're feeling like, I'm a nobody doing nothing. I'm just sitting in the center of the room. Like that. Even in music. I remember once I was on a tour with Gurudev, and I happened to be able to sing on that tour in Kerala. And we saw 1 million people in 3 days. And I started a bhajan that everybody knew. And there must have been 600,000 people there. And immediately like 10,000 people got up and started dancing. I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And then Gurudev started leading the bhajan, even cooler. And then all of a sudden, all I was doing was like playing guitar. I mean, I was singing along, but it disappeared into the music. And I thought, I don't know if you know who Luciano Pavarotti is, a very famous singer, one of the most famous in the world. I said I wouldn't trade places with Luciano
Can
Pavarotti.
you repeat the name?
Luciano Pavarotti, very famous opera singer, very renowned. I said I wouldn't trade places with him in 1,000,000 years. This is the opposite of performance. You set up conditions, you disappear, something greater than you moves through. In the music, in the teaching, even when you're meditating, same.
Wow. Can you elaborate more on difference between bhajan singing and enjoying compared to the pop and the cultural music and the bands?
Pop and cultural music in India and also in the West, there's something creative about it. I mean, the best people are amazingly creative, but it's also a business for them. And they're wanting to get fans. I just put out my second CD. It's called Sound in the Silence, but it took me years to do it. Not only because I wanted it to be good, but because I wanted the music to go out to more people, but I didn't want, I know it sounds funny, I didn't want to put a lot of attention on myself. Maybe my hang up, but I enjoy playing at satsang, but I didn't want to become a bhajan pop star, you know? And there's some people that really feed on that. They really want the adoration of an audience. They really want a lot of fans. They really want... And I love playing for big groups because something comes through and they get transformed. But I'm really clear that I'm just the... I don't want to say the loudspeaker, and I don't want to... I mean, music is creative and you need to work at it and you become better and better at it. But then, if it really is your dharma, you let go. And something happens that's greater than you, but that you have nothing to do with. Make sense?
Mm.
That's the best music for me. So I'm really glad I don't get paid for it. You know, I'm really glad I don't have people banging on my door every day wanting to find out something about me. I mean, I'm happy to teach, and I love my students, and I'm in touch with my students every day on the internet. But I'm happy to let the music speak for itself.
Hmm. And as a listener, what difference do you feel when you listen to bhajans compared to some film songs or some music that we hear
I'm a
otherwise?
big fan of Hindi film songs. But bhajans are meant to drop you into yourself. You know, a lot of Hindi film songs are meant to make you feel romantic or excited. And I love them. They're just a wonderful art form. I remember one night, a number of years ago, the satsangs had gotten very rajasic. Every song was like, ch, 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 ch. So some of us who wanted something a little quieter would play afterwards, sort of like post-satsang party, on Gurudev's front porch, on his kutir. And those songs were more from the heart of devotion, to drop you into the heart. And so when you use those ancient sounds, those mantras in songs, they have an effect. And the effect is not only to draw you deep into yourself, but to bring up energy, love, bliss, awareness, and to spread it in the environment. So it's not just for you, and you're being connected to everybody else that's doing it at the same time. So it's, for me, it's a complete opposite of performance. If that makes any sense.
What is the best way to enjoy a satsang or a bhajan?
First of all, to turn off your phone and stop talking to your neighbors and just have this intention, okay, I'm going to be here 100%, whatever's supposed to happen. And whatever happens, just throw yourself into it 100% and let go and see what happens. You know, all of us have this judging mind. Oh, I like this song. I don't like that song. I want this person to sing. Why is that person doing all the singing? What's on my phone? Who's trying to reach me now? To let go of all of that and just be there. And if there's something greater than the people involved moving through the satsang, closing your eyes and being silent allows yourself to pick that energy up, to surf that wave, as we would say in California.
Surf that wave.
Surf that wave.
Wow. There's a hesitation to sing or for somebody to dance. How do you overcome that?
Move beyond it. I mean, just when that hesitation comes, that voice comes, you know, oh, you don't want to do this. You'd look silly. What will people think of you? You're not very good dancer. You're not very good singer. That's not you. That's just this little voice. You know, Gurudev talks about the difference between the seer and the scenery. That's definitely the scenery, just, you know, your ego talking. Just say thanks for sharing and then move up. That's what I like so much about India. I was doing a private satsang the other night in someone's home. You were there. Everybody got up and danced. And nobody was looking at each other. Everybody was just so free. You see that with children a lot too. I often do satsangs at the Gurukul when I'm here, because I used to study there. And those boys, there is no inhibition in those boys. First they start moving around, then they can't help themselves, and they jump up and they start dancing, and they're like popping like popcorn, and they're having so much fun. And everybody has that in them. We just have to sort of let the inhibited adult step to the side for a little bit and go for it.
About Gurukul. You studied 5 years in a Gurukul.
Just like a month or two a year. I wish I'd stayed there the whole year, but I still have my teaching responsibilities. But
So what did you study in the Gurukul and how was your experience?
a little bit of heaven on earth. Happiest I've been in this life studying the Gurukul. I studied shlokas and I studied pujas mostly. At Gurudev's direction, every year he would give me something to study. I would study it. And sometimes I would teach English there and teach them ultimate frisbee on the weekends. And I made some wonderful friendships there with the boys. And to this day, I miss it. I think after a certain number of years, Gurudev thought I had enough, of what he wanted me to learn. But every year he would give me something new to learn. And the last year, I said, oh, what am I going to be learning next? What's my next assignment? And he looked at me with such compassion. He said, oh, you've graduated. I'm like, I didn't want to graduate. If I had my druthers away from my responsibilities in the U.S., I would build a little kuti in the Gurukul and stay there at least 6 months a year and just keep learning and learning and learning.
Wow. And how does, we all have seen Gurukuls from outside, but you have been there and studied yourself. How is the experience to actually study the shlokas? How do they teach and how do you learn?
We're so lucky we have Gurudev as an inspiration because this Gurukul operates like Gurukuls operated 1,000 years ago. No computers, no cell phones, no TV, no outside influence. And I was treated that way. I was not treated special. I was sitting on one end of a grass mat on a floor, and my tutor was on the other end of the grass mat, and we worked in the morning, and I studied a little in the afternoon, and we worked again in the afternoon, and I got tested, and it's very simple, but it really provides the experience for these boys to fully implement, integrate, personify the Vedic values their whole life. And now all of the old temple families in South India, and I think starting in North India now, because we have other Gurukuls up there, those families are starting to send their sons there. I met kids whose families have been in those temples for 1,000 years. Can you imagine that this Vedic tradition is being passed down from father to son? And now women are getting more involved in it. Although women aren't studying at the Gurukul, they're chanting the Vedas and doing all kinds of things.
A question about the pedagogy. How, when we learn any new subject in the schools, it's usually a teacher teaching on the board, we taking notes. How is it different in the Gurukul? How do they learn?
It's all oral. And from the moment you get there, even like you see the little boys do it, the teacher says something, the kids repeat it. The teacher says it again, the kids repeat it again. Maybe they repeat it 5 times, maybe they repeat it 10 times. Starting out with very simple things and then moving on like that. But it's all oral. Because if you see somebody doing a puja, most of the time there's no books or anything. It's just coming out of their brains. And it has to be done in a very, very precise way. For a long time, this Vedic knowledge, was lost. First, it became unpopular in connection with Buddhism and Jainism. And then Adi Shankar came and reestablished the Vedic knowledge in the 4 mats to keep it alive. And then, again, there was a time, especially under the British, where it had a hard time, really, because the British closed down all the Gurukuls and all the Ayurvedic colleges. And so it struggled. But I think if Gurudev is not known for anything else, it'll be for the revitalization of Vedic knowledge in the world, to really stabilize it for like another 1,000 years.
Mm.
I think that's one of the main things he's here to do. And this Gurukul is like the foundation of it.
What is your favorite shloka?
Oh, there's so many. Every day I chant the one to Ganapati that I started this off with. I'm very fond of one to Mother Divine, Sarva Mangala Mangalye. And there was a moment when I was leaving. I'd finished my studies for that year, and it was my last day, just like today is my last day. And Sundaramurti Swami, who's the head of the Gurukul, of the Agama part of the Gurukul, said, "We're having a little reception and lunch. Wouldn't you like to come?" Well, when Sundaramurti Swami asked me to do something, there's not a lot of wiggle room, He asked, but I'm a student, I need to go. So I go, and there's this big ceremony happening in one part of the Devi Hall, and I'm sitting in the corner thinking, where's my lunch? I just want to eat lunch. I have to pack. I have to get out of here. And pretty soon, Sundaramurti Swami's son comes over, and he says, "Wouldn't you be more comfortable sitting over there in the chairs with us?" Again, not a request that I could easily say no to. So I'm sitting there. There's this very saintly gentleman sitting next to me. And it turns out he was Sundaramurti Swami's tutor when he was a boy. And he's at a temple in Bangalore. And then Sundaramurti Swami gets up and he starts talking in Tamil. But I hear my name mentioned. And I'm like, I'm still looking for lunch. What am I doing here? He's talking John Osborne this, John Osborne that. I couldn't figure out what he was talking about. But I think he was saying something about what I was doing in America. And then he turned to me and he said, "Now you speak." And I wasn't thinking that I was there to do anything but eat lunch. I'd sort of gotten trapped. And I got up and I thought, what could I say to these boys, Turns out it was a graduation ceremony, but nobody told me it was a graduation ceremony. And I said to the boys, whom I'd done satsang with, whom I'd played ultimate frisbee with, whom had all been my teachers, it was a strong connection. I said, I was born into a good family in the West, and I received some of the finest education that the West can provide. I said, but there's nothing like my education at the Gurukul. And I talked about how it had completely changed me and how important it was what each boy was learning. That he's going to go out in the world and be this lighthouse of Vedic knowledge, and that they were all Gurudev's secret weapon. And I was shaking. I was so nervous to talk to the boys. And I thought, in another 30 seconds, I'll be done.
Mm.
And then Sundaramurti Swami was coup de grace. He turns and he says, "Now you chant in front of the boys." And I was like, standing up in front of Paul McCartney or one of the Beatles and saying, "Well, now you sing." I was terrified. But I got through this Sarva Mangala Mangalye, chant to Mother Divine. And the boys all
joined.
Yeah. We stood up and clapped. And it was interesting. So those chants, many others. There's a long one to Ganapati that starts out the Rudram. That took me a while to learn. So I had those boys, and then I also had a Tamil tutor in America. And so when the boys were done with me, they would send an email, or I'd let them use my cell phone, and they'd tell my Tamil tutor in America, I've taken him to this place. Now now he's yours. And then when I back to America, the Tamil tutor would take me a little bit further. And believe me, I don't consider myself an expert in Sanskrit or pujas. I was lucky to learn what I learned. He'd take me a little bit further, and then he'd call the people at the Gurukul and say, well, I've taken him this far. Now you take him
out from here. At the party that day, you mentioned one of your happy moments. And you mentioned about Gurukul. Do you want to share that story?
I'm trying to remember which happy moment that was. There were many.
About the boys coming and pranking and playing.
Oh, yeah. Boys love the music. And they try to play pranks on me. They're very mischievous. And, the routine at the Gurukul is, they're like up at 4 a.m. It's like very strenuous. So when they get a chance to sort of have fun, they have fun. So the bhajan that they like best that I played for them was Ganapati Om. So they'd lie in wait behind a bush, wait for me to go past, and then they'd jump out and terrify me and go, Ganapati Om! and they like to surprise me. And so they would do stuff like that all the time, just like any boys would, But amazing young scholars, amazing, by the time they're 13 or 14, they're doing these long pujas and doing them impeccably. The standards. A puja is like a physics experiment. It has to be done. The pronunciation has to be absolutely right. Performance has to be absolutely right. You have to have the right ingredients. Some of the big pujas, like the Navaratri pujas, they have 108 herbs. So to keep that tradition alive and to keep it powerful is a very big seva for the whole world. So I'm big fans of those boys. I think they're some of Gurudev's greatest heroes.
That's fantastic. On this podcast, we also love to hear perspectives from different parts of the world. What is your perspective growing up in America, and how do you compare America and India in the terms of culture?
Well, there's probably 3 things to compare it with, because I've been coming to India since like 1991. And the India of 1991 is very different than the India of 2025. And America is very different. I grew up in a much simpler America. I grew up in the country. Country was united before the Vietnam War. It was a very safe place. Not so much trouble with drugs and alcohol. Country shared one viewpoint about what was right for the country, what was not right for the country. And now America is very divided and having trouble finding its way. And India, has grown up. I think they've taken some things from the West that were maybe not the best things. Take from the West, I see a lot more alcohol in India than I used to see. And I see a lot more worldliness on television. Used to be maybe only one television channel when I first started out. And kids didn't watch TV so much, and they weren't exposed to things like Star TV, things like that. On the other hand, there's a lot less poverty in India than there used to be. Indians are rising out of poverty, a lot more education. I really support what we're doing in Art of Living. There's 100,000 kids who are usually the first people in their family to go to school. I really support that. And I really think that India and America have a lot to offer each other, especially now since there's so many Indians in America. But America has the entrepreneurship, technological experience. India has some brilliant people, scholars and businessmen and engineers and people like that. And similar values, family values and things. So I think India is going to end up one of the superpowers of the 21st century. And I think India and America are only going to grow closer and closer.
Guruji says, if you want to learn business, learn from the Americans. And you have been on top positions in many companies, and as announced in your introduction, consulted and been speakers at many renowned universities and companies, even the Congress. So give us some lessons on business.
Maybe you can be a little more specific in asking me.
How to make money?
Having comes from giving, not from getting. So develop a product or an idea that people need, solving a problem that hasn't been solved, or a disruptive product that does something much better and differently than any other product that's out there. Give it your 100%. Find really good people around you. Have a strong sense of ethics, both in how you offer your product and how you're in the marketplace, how you treat people, and how you treat your employees. And that's a good start.
And when you used to teach these companies there, what of the Indian values were you teaching to the companies and businesses there?
Well, there are Indian cultural values, but there are also human values, which are very strong in India. So when we would teach in a company, number one, the company would get much closer together. Oftentimes their egos and different things, ambitions, holding people apart. And number two, it would increase the communication between people. And number three, it would lower the stress. A lot of stress in business. And when people are doing the Kriya or doing meditation, at the end of the day and doing it together, a lot more creativity comes up, a lot more inspiration comes up, a lot more belongingness comes up, and a lot more focus on really good customer service comes up. So when I was teaching at Harvard, I said, when you get out in a company, teach your colleagues, not your competitors, because it may be the biggest competitive advantage that they... I was astonished. I was teaching at Wharton, and the person next to me was a very famous guy named Bill George, who was the founder of a multi-billion-dollar company called Medtronics. And even I was surprised when he said he attributed 90% of the success of his company to his daily practice of meditation. So it's huge. I mean, what does company's success really run on? The ideas of the people, their ability to work together, their creativity, their inspiration, their intuition. And when you practice these techniques, all of those things just start to flow like they've never flowed before. Mm-hmm. So now Bill George is teaching at Harvard, but work for him.
You ran a venture capital firm for 15 years. How would you select and invest in companies?
I had good practice. I worked for a large venture capital firm before I had my own. And my job was intake. So I would look at 50, 80, maybe even 100 business plans every week to find 2 or 3 that were worth even us looking at. So a lot of discernment, a lot of focus, and a lot of big picture awareness at the same time. I had to know about different industries and stuff. And I swear my meditation was an intuition that came from my meditation. It was like, there's something about this. I don't know if this guy's been successful before. And I dig into it a little bit more. And I was able to find several that have become multi-million-dollar companies. Not tooting my own horn, but meditation is it does 3 things. It allows you to focus very deeply while still holding a wide awareness, and to drop into your meditation, drop into your intuition at the same time. So it's a very practical business tool. And then some of those skills that I learned there, I put to work in my own fund.
Mm-hmm. What other business tools, skills?
Focus, big picture, intuition, putting all those together.
So meditation has helped you immensely. And
I think it's to whatever success I've had in the investment business, meditation has been absolutely the critical difference for that.
Yeah. Do you feel that difference in you who has these intuitive abilities compared to somebody who is not meditating? Do you feel it in a meeting or in your competitors or colleagues?
Sometimes you're in a meeting. I'm not saying I have any unusual intuitive abilities, but sometimes you're in a meeting with somebody and they're hardly present. I mean, their mind is somewhere else, or they're so stressed out, they're tapping their feet, they're looking at their phone. Just to be able to fully be present in the moment, to delve into what's going on, concentrate or whatever you want to say. Some people don't even have that. They're so stressed and so distracted. And there's so much more mental ability in each of us than we're always able to use every day, that when meditation kind of drops that bucket in the well and brings it up, you often find yourself like more present than a lot of people in the meeting and seeing more what's really going on. I would have to, when I was a consultant, I'd have to drop like in a parachute into a company and see this company is, usually there's companies that weren't working as they should be. Where is the one thing that if you change it, it's going to bring a lot more success to the company? Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a process that's not working, but you have to really focus deeply on what's working in the company and what's not.
About the American culture, you were in college during the hippie movement. How was it then, the post-Vietnam War?
I was actually in college in the middle of Vietnam, and a lot of students were taking drugs. A lot of students were really disappointed because not only were we fighting a war that people didn't support, but it turned out that the government was lying to people about what was going on. So there was this really, especially at the end of school, very strong anger and feeling like we need a different government, we need to go in a different direction. And so, when you're in college, that really flavors your whole college experience. So it was like that.
Many people were just having sex with anybody, anywhere, a lot of drugs. And how was that experience?
I was lucky in that I learned to meditate very soon after I went to college. So I observed it around me, but I wasn't as much of a participant as I would have been had I not learned to meditate. Right away, not at all interested in drugs. Alcohol, not so much either. So it changed my life very quickly. My relationships got better. I got better grades in school. Less, a lot of college students have these emotional ups and downs. Less of that. More contentment. More happiness in my day-to-day life.
Wow, so you have been lucky in that way. And those people, your colleagues, your fellow students who used to get intoxicated with substances, and they might have different experience after meditation. Can you share a story of transformation? And what difference do they say?
You mean friends that I had that used those substances and then...
before and after the drugs.
Yeah, most people, if they stay with a meditation for more than a couple of weeks, the experience they have in meditation is deeper. You might even say it's more intoxicating. It's certainly more fulfilling than, say, alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant. It dulls your senses, and it may give you some calm and peace and quiet for a while, but then it goes away. Meditation taps into something which is yours as an all-time reality, deep inside yourself. And you carry that not only while you're meditating, but throughout the day. So it's a little bit more sustainable. It's a little bit more fulfilling over a long period of time. So most people drop their interest in drugs and alcohol if they stay with meditation, or at least diminish it.
Many of the veterans who have faced these traumas, they also go towards these drugs or something like that, right? So I think it just numbs their senses, but you come back again and how is the experience?
Yeah, if they're using drugs and alcohol, oftentimes it's because they can't sleep. And they use it to be able to, because the dreams they have, the nightmares they have. I had a Vietnam veteran, older man who was in his 80s, who was a dog handler, which means during the Vietnam War, the enemy were mostly in tunnels. So they'd send these dogs into the tunnels to drive the Viet Cong out, and then they'd fight them. And it turns out he had a different weapon than everybody else had. And so when they sent the dog into the tunnel and the people came out, everybody got shot. But because he had a different kind of a gun, he could tell which one he shot. Make sense, what I'm saying so far? It was like this 13-year-old girl. So the last day of the course, of the veterans course, he comes to me in tears. And he shakes me and he said, she's gone, she's gone. This is 50 years after the Vietnam War. I said, who's gone? He said, that girl appeared in my dream every night.
Whoa.
For 50 years. And after the first Kriya, she disappeared. Now that is
a horror.
Transformational healing. And that kind of stuff happens all the time. I had another guy who had a close friend who committed suicide. And because he was his close friend, the guy on my course felt responsible, like I should have done more. Felt incredibly guilty because he felt like he let his friend down. Understand? And during the Kriya, his friend came to him and said, don't worry. I don't hold you responsible. I'm doing okay where I am. It was like taking a 1,000-pound backpack off this guy's back. So like I said, very challenging course, incredibly fulfilling course. people's lives transformed completely in front of you. Again and again, we've been teaching this thousands of veterans for the last 15, 20 years.
Can you share some more guru stories or stories of miracles that you have witnessed yourself?
Well, one of the first times, I've told this story often, that I realized that Gurudev was more than his physical body. So when I was on a plane flight from Arizona, business plane flight, coming back to LA from Arizona to Los Angeles. And periodically we have these storms. They're like monsoons called El Nino. They come every few years. So outside the plane as we were getting ready to land, you could see that the rain was so heavy that you couldn't even see beyond it. All you could see was this monsoon-like rain. And as we're getting ready to land, the plane went upside down. So people that were in their seatbelts find themselves hanging in the seatbelts. People that weren't in their seatbelts went flying. Luggage went flying. The plane is shaking. It felt like we were going to crash. And I was with a colleague, lady colleague, and she was terrified. She was screaming, and she dug her fingernails into my arm. She was just holding on to me for dear life. And I closed my eyes, and I said, Jai Gurudev. And Gurudev's face appeared. He said, not tonight. So everybody else in the plane was like completely convinced that we were going to die. And I just closed my eyes and meditated. And that was one of the first times that I realized that his presence in our life is much greater than oftentimes from moment to moment we realize.
Wow. What are you most grateful for?
Boy, where to start? Grateful to have a human body. Doesn't come easily. Grateful to have a human body that's healthy and was educated in a way that I'm not just working for food, in a field somewhere, that I have a level of education and a level of health that allows me not only to take care of myself, but to reach out and want to take care of other people too. Of course, grateful for the knowledge, grateful for Gurudev, a Brahman Jnani in human form doesn't come very often on this planet. Grateful to have a connection to him. Grateful to be teaching at my age and still healthy enough to travel widely and teach and light up people's candles. And grateful to be sitting here with you.
Wow. I want to take one step back about the money and the business part. Money and spirituality. How would you compare both? Because there are a lot of stigmas related to money. People who make money are a bit averse to spirituality. People in spirituality, they think you don't need money, or some say you cannot, to have a family you really need money.
Of course. Be on this planet and to feed yourself and to be responsible for yourself. Of course you need money. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi used to talk about 200% of life. He said you need 100% of the outer life. You need to have a job. You need to, be healthy, be successful, have a family, take care of your family. And then to support that, you need 100% of the inner life. Now, some people are very spiritual. They have 100% of the inner life, but they aren't even able to take care of themselves. And they're not contributing much and they're dependent on other people. That's a kind of poverty. There's other kind of people that have all the money in the world, but they don't have the interior resources. So they have a different kind of oppression, I taught some people, some of the wealthiest Indians in America. They're part of a charity called the American India Foundation. Just the most successful, wealthiest Indians in America. And they had planes and houses and everything that they ever dreamed of, probably more than they ever dreamed of. But they weren't necessarily the happiest people. Imagine you have all these material dreams, then you get them, then what? Happiness comes from in here. And if you're not careful and there's too much emphasis on materiality, it can overwhelm you so that whatever spiritual resources you have can't sustain it. So you need a balance, inner and outer. And that's where fulfillment in life comes from.
And this is about the people who have a lot of money. And we hear a lot of stories of that, about emptiness and how spirituality helps them to get centered and have both of the 100%. What would you say to people who are too much into spirituality and less into the outside world, and they find it difficult to survive, you said poverty, or to have a family? What they might sometimes be in a state of lethargy, or they cannot just don't know what to do or how to go, even though they are very spiritual.
Yeah, spirituality, when properly taught, properly practiced, is very practical. You know, you meditate and then you act. And hopefully your actions are predicated on or based on your experience of who you are. A lot of talents come out when you meditate. But you have to use them. You have to act, you know? Otherwise you become a spiritual couch potato. And you just sit there and think, oh, I'm in bliss, I'm this, I'm that. I think the real turning point is when you realize your life is not just for yourself. So at least you can start doing seva for other people. And the more you do, the more you give away of yourself, the more a power greater than yourself in the world finds ways to help you to be more successful materially, things like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're saying that just being available to give, you get even by that.
Yeah. Having comes from giving, not from getting. So the more you do for people around you, so even your meditation is not just for you, it's for the world. And I have a really good friend whom I considered an enlightened being before he died, a Christian monk, who said when you drop into the center of your own heart through meditation, you find yourself in the center of everyone else's heart at the same time. So once you realize that you're connected to something bigger, then you sort of feel like, well, I'm not just here for myself. I'm here to somehow give or serve in the world. And nature, the divine, whatever you want to call it, knows what you need. But just to sit there and say, this whole world is an illusion, you know, not worth, I think that's a waste of a human life. We're here for each other. We're here to make the world better. We're here to leave the world a better place than we found it. And everybody finds a different way of doing that. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but
Yeah. What are your thoughts on depression and inertia, and how to get out of that?
all those things are caused by low prana. And when you raise the prana through yoga, exercise, meditation, service to other people, a lot of times those things just disappear. Mm-hmm. But you got to get off your couch. I tell people when I teach them meditation, the deeper your meditation, the more conscious you are of your practice, the more activity you need to have. You need to have some dynamic physical activity. Otherwise, you just become this meditating couch potato.
You have learned from both Maharshi Mahesh Yogi and Sri Ravi Shankar. How would you compare between them?
You know, they're both from the same tradition, Shankaracharya tradition, but they manifested it in a different way. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi manifested the knowledge of his guru, Swami Brahmananda Saraswati, in a very dynamic, he was a kshatriya, he wasn't a Brahmin, kind of, let's go do our best to eliminate stress in society. So he focused a lot on meditation, but he was a very strong, almost military leader. And my experience of Sri Ravi Shankar is equally dynamic. Very, millions and millions and millions of followers. But he's the manifestation of Adi Shankara and that Shankaracharya tradition as divine love. So two very dynamic gurus manifesting that knowledge and that energy in two completely different ways.
Mm-hmm. One was very straightforward, like a military type, you said.
Almost like a military leader, like you were in his army and you were teaching people, and stress was, he had a very hard job. The world was very stressful in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he had a very tough job. It's like he had the first cut going through society, especially Western society. He was very successful in, and millions of people learned to meditate. And then Sri Ravi Shankar came, and a whole different level of knowledge arose.
About love, about dynamism.
Yeah, and about service, seva, power of satsang, power of devotion, power of world transformation. We're in 190 countries or something, and I meditated with, 2.8 million people all at once at one of the World Cultural Festivals. That can't help but have a huge effect on the consciousness in the world. Unless people are feeling peace inside themselves, there's never going to be world peace. There's always going to be wars. There's always going to be conflicts. But it has to start with the individual.
Wow. What other issues do you see in your part of the world currently in US?
How long do we have?
Top issue.
There's a dividedness in America now that was never there when I was growing up. There were always two parties. There was always, some conversation, some competition. But for people to think the other side is not just wrong, but evil, not deserving of love and compassion. There's also tremendous economic inequality in America now, where there are a lot of people struggling just to be able to find housing, a lot of homeless people, a lot of people struggling, trying to feed families. So there's a lot of economic turbulence, there's a lot of political divisiveness, and no clear vision to unite the country right now.
Okay. So it's not a good time to go to US.
It's always a good time to go to the US. The US economy is doing better than most other economies, and people will come there from other countries will find a lot of opportunity there.
Thank you for watching this podcast till the end. Please let us know in the comments what more topics and guests would you like to see in future episodes.
Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba Hey Mata Vishwa Mohini Devi Jagadamba Hey Mata Vishwa Mohini Devi Jagadamba Jaya Durga Mahamaya Jagadamba Jaya Durga Mahamaya Jagadamba Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba Hey Mata Vishwa Mohini Devi Jagadamba Hey Mata Vishwa Mohini Devi Jagadamba Jaya Durga Mahamaya Jagadamba Jaya Durga Mahamaya Jagadamba Parameshwari Jaya Durga Jagadeshwari Jaya Amba Jai Bhavani Ma Ambe Bhavani Ma Ambe Bhavani Ma Devi Bhavani Ma Durge Bhavani Ma Kali Bhavani Ma Hridayani Vasima Devi Bhavani Ma, Atmani Vasima, Devi Bhavani Ma, Jai Jai Bhavani Ma, Ambe Bhavani Ma. For those people who are listening to this podcast who don't know Sanskrit very well, this is kind of a double entendre bhajan. Ananda means bliss. Nandi means baby. And although it has a particular historical reference in India, I always think if you really want to find joy and bliss in your life, look at small children and be like them. Small children are naturally that way. There's an old song that I'm still trying to remember after 30 years, hasn't been sung in a long time. So many loves, so many lives, seems we've been here so long, and nothing can give you the peace that you've wanted, and you've wanted that peace so strong. Down through the ages, through the hearts of the sages, they've carried it like a flame. Through the winds of desire, they've carried this fire, and it's here within reach of your hand. So come back, come back, come back to the ancient love. From the earth beneath you to the sky up above comes the call of the ancient love. Offer your troubles to the light. It's always the darkest at the end of the night. Ancient love rises up like a dove when it finally finds the ancient love. So many loves, so many lives, here seems we've been here so long. Nothing can give you that peace that you've wanted, and you've wanted that peace so strong. But down through the ages, through the hearts of the sages, they've carried it like a flame. Through the winds of desire, they've carried this fire, and it's here within reach of your hand. So come back, come back, come back to the ancient love. From the earth beneath you to the sky above comes the call of the ancient love. Door of my heart open wide, I keep for thee. Door of
my heart open wide, I keep for thee. Night and day, night and day, I look for thee. Night and day, night and day, night and day, I look for thee. Night and day, will my days lie away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days lie away without seeing thee, my Lord? Just for once, just for once, just for once, come to me. Just for once, just for once, just for once, come to me. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for thee. Oh, it said God gave the birds their song, and they sing it back to Him. Like the birds, He gave these songs to me. And so I sing them back to you, always back to you. Always back to you. There's this beautiful, beautiful, so very beautiful feeling in my heart. And when I gaze at you, gaze and gaze and gaze at you, like a flower at the sun, I get this beautiful, beautiful, so very beautiful feeling in my heart. Rama, Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Rama Rama Hare Rama